You out there guys, this is Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft and this is the Echo1 General Assault Tool or GAT. Now I've owned this gun for a couple of months now and I've got plenty of gaming hours in with it in both an indoor and outdoor settings, and most importantly I've given it plenty of chances to break on me. Now if there's something in particular you want to find about this gun, you can skip ahead to certain parts in the review by using timestamps in the description down below. And with that out of the way, on with the review. So, the Echo1 GAT is based upon a real steel firearm known as the Intratec Tech 9, a machine pistol that has something of a deviating history from other firearms I've reviewed on this channel. Whereas most airsoft adaptations I've covered in the past refer to guns that were adopted by law enforcement or military use, not so with the Tech 9. Now, the gun was originally designed to be a more compact and inexpensive version of a Swedish submachine gun known as the Carl Gustaf M45. And was originally intended for adoption by the South African government, but it was never adopted by them or any other government institution. When it was marketed to the Americans, the original design of a folding stock and foregrip was scrapped to comply with the 1934 National Firearms Act and was sold as a closed-bolt semi-automatic pistol on their domestic market. Due to its very simple design, however, it was a relatively simple process to convert the weapon to fire fully automatically. Combine this with a cheap cost, easily concealable nature and 32 round high capacity magazines, it shouldn't be much of a surprise to learn that this gun was heavily favoured by criminal elements and quickly gained a reputation of infamy for being used in street gangs and tragically in school shootings. Although it is still found in the used firearm market, this weapon is actually banned by name in several US states, including California and New York, which explains that even though this was a very popular firearm in the 90s, you don't hear much about the Tech 9 these days. The airsoft version of the Tech 9, as represented by the Echo1 GAT, has gone for one of the more original designs of the platform, but has taken some design liberties to make it function as an airsoft platform itself, the main notable exceptions being the front foregrip, the rails and the adjustable stock at the back. It should be noted as well though that the Echo1 GAT can be bought in just a machine pistol without the stock option, but the foregrip is quite integral to the design, as we'll go into when we break the gun down and its features. So what can you expect to find in the box of the Echo1 GAT when it turns up? Well, let's crack this one open and have a look. So first off, it comes in this kind of bare bones cardboard. It's not the most durable in the world, but it serves its purpose. But more crucially, you'll find that the entirety is surrounded by this really thick foam. There is absolutely no way that this gun is turning up damaged. It is just encased fully in thick foam, which is excellent to see. So in the middle, you're going to have your GAT itself. It also includes not one, but two high capacity magazines, a single NIM battery wired to Tamiya, and a really basic wall charger. But with all this considered, with everything that comes with this part of the package, I consider this as a very real candidate for a starter gun for someone who is wanting to get into airsoft. You have two mags to see you through easily any game length, the battery's there, a charger is there, we'll get into that in a sec, and obviously you've got the platform itself, so this does come across as kind of a complete package. The only caveat I'll say is the charger itself. You'll notice the hole in the box for mine is empty, because mine's in the bin. Because, yes, it will charge the battery, but it is a very, very basic charger. Never use a LiPo battery with this charger. It is not a balanced charger. That's a very good way to start a fire. But it'll work just fine for the NIM battery. The big problem with it, though, is there is absolutely zero indication on the charger itself that the battery is full. You have to basically guess whether this battery is full, and if it starts to get quite alarmingly hot, it's probably full. But that's why I always, don't use these chargers. Get yourself a proper one, ideally a balanced charger that can do both NIM and LiPo. That's what you really want going forward. But for someone just who has no airsoft gear whatsoever and is wanting to get into it, it's usable, and this does make it part of a complete package, which is very appealing to certain players. But what about the gun itself? Well, we'll dive a little bit into that in depth in the next section. So what are the first impressions of the GAT when you pick it up? Well, I've long considered this, and the word that comes most readily to mind when describing this in one is utilitarian. You have bought yourself a basic gun for basic gun money, and it does kind of show in some ways. Now, that's not to say it feels like a toy. This definitely has some weight to it, and it's not the worst built thing in the world. It does have some fairly sturdy elements to it. There are a couple of things, however, that do kind of give away that this isn't a really expensive product, namely the slight wobble in the stock, the really boring and quite frankly basic finish to both the foregrip and the pistol grip. The fire selector could be a bit tighter, kind of a little bit of wobble there, but the real offender is the bolt on the top. When you pull that back, it sounds tinny, it feels tinny, it's horrible. There's a little spring in there and you can hear that rattle sometimes when you shake the gun, and it does detract from the overall feel of the thing. But you bought a basic gun with basic gun money. You can't expect to have an absolutely amazing quality product for the kind of money that this is going for. And I do think it definitely does have some plus points in its favour. It feels solid. You've got mostly polymer construction and steel on the upper to give it that weight. So yes, this isn't a great quality gun, like certainly VFC has nothing to fear from this, but you are getting what you pay for and a little bit more besides, which is something I do find quite appealing. But let's go into how it actually performs and functions and break down all the features of the gun. So let's go into detail with some of the features of the gun, starting right at the back with the adjustable stock. First thing, there is no rubberizing element on the back of this. You do have a sort of like meat pounder sort of thing on there, and some weird cutouts on the side, but what it results in is a stock that is not very comfortable to shoulder. There's a bit too many hard plastic elements in there, just digs in a little bit, and it doesn't even really seat that securely. Like, if you put pressure on it, it's fine, but I've seen better designs, and even just a thin rubberizing layer would have made this worlds better, but hey ho. You do also have multiple positions that you can put this in, up to your preference. The shortest one's quite funny, because for a normal sized adult, when you use this, there's no way that you're going to actually hit your shoulder with this thing unless you really scrunch it up. But I think this is actually a good thing, because it kind of encompasses a bit more of the player base, i.e. this would be very good for a smaller person or potentially a younger airsofter, because that stock gets so close. If you've got a smaller build, that might be more comfortable for you. So potentially if you're a younger person, this might be a good stock for you to have. There is also a QD sling mount on the back here, which you can access from either side, which is absolutely great to see. There are two other sling mounts, well, there were two other sling mounts on the gun. We've got one up at the front on the heat shield, and the empty gap where one was on the back of the gun. On my first day out at Matlock Combat Games, I was using this to sling the gun. I was running it as a backup for my sniper, and it pinged off, dropped the gun onto the ground, never found that mount again. And it's not hard to understand why when you actually see the witness marks left behind, because the welding on these is exceptionally lacking. If you were to use these sling mounts, I would suggest using both at once, or just stick with the QD one, because if you use one of them, it's going to break. So I wouldn't put much faith in these sling points myself. On the top of the gun, you have the iron sights, which, in a word, are useless. Well, what a lot of guns tend to do is design with the idea in mind. So the big problem this all stems from is the stock. As you'll notice, the stock tube is directly concentric with the main body of the gun itself, which means that when you actually go down to put your eyes onto the sights, you can't get your eye low enough to use the rear sight. It is a physical impossibility. And it speaks of lazy design. Now, what you'll see on other guns is you can have sights that fold up to bring the actual aim point higher, or you'll have a sight raiser, or the stock will be lower slightly, just so you can get your cheek down it. Not so with this one. They just bolted a buffer tube on the end of it, and that's that. And as mentioned, I just feel that's exceptionally lazy. And it results in you not actually being able to use the iron sights at all. Like, no mask, no glasses, you can't get your eyes down that low. I mean, you could hold it out like this, but at that point, what was the point in ever buying the one with the stock? But there is a front rail at the top, so you could mount a red dot there, and I have. And that doesn't work either if you've got a face mask. If you've got like a mesh face mask, you still, again, can't get your face low enough to actually use the red dot sight. If you've got a sight raiser on there, like another block, Picatinny block to raise the whole thing up, then maybe, but that's not exactly going to look particularly great, is it? So yeah, needless to say, not impressed with the sighting solutions of this gun. There is another Picatinny rail on the gun though, and it's actually underneath the supplied foregrip. The foregrip itself is your battery compartment. You've got a little screw here that you can undo with your hand, no tools required, excellent. And the space inside is very generous. You can fit the supplied NIM battery in there with plenty of room, like There's a bit too much in the way of excessive wiring, but you'll definitely get the battery in there. What I've actually been running it on though is this 7.4 volt LiPo battery and converted my gun to Dean's because Dean's is a better connector in my opinion. But yeah, plenty of space for battery solutions in there. However, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of this foregrip. It is very chunky. And the finish is very, very basic as well. It's not the most comfortable, but I personally think you can get a good grip on it. And since the sights are useless, you're firing from the hip most of the time with this, you're going to need as many contact points as you can get. And the foregrip provides a very good contact point. There are other battery solutions, but you're going to have to get a bit finicky with them. I have seen people that have modded it to be able to fit the battery inside the heat shield, but that takes a lot of work and you're not going to be able to do that with the stock gun, so do that at your own risk. What I think would be a more elegant solution if you really can't stand the front foregrip is to actually mount a fake PEC box to the top, because there's enough wiring to rethread it and stick that on the top there if you were utterly against the foregrip. Me personally, I'm not. I quite like it. I think it's alright. It's not the most comfortable, but it serves its purpose. So, also right at the front of the gun is the flash hider here. Extremely basic, held on with a single pin, and I don't think this is supposed to be removable. Like, there is no 14mm suppressor. Don't think you can go mounting suppressors and tracer units to the front of this. There are no goodies under here. Don't remove that pin. Going back then, fire selector. Now, it's a bit wobbly. Like, I am extremely worried actually that one day this fire selector is going to go AWOL and I'll never find it again, but it serves its purpose for now. It's a bit weird though in terms of its selecting, because unlike most guns, it actually goes from safe to full auto to semi, which, okay, you do yours. Like, if that's how you want the gun to function, sure, but it is a bit weird. Continuing down then, you've got the pistol grip that you hold onto. Again, mentioned, very basic. I think the actual webbing in my thumb gets quite sore after I use this for a while because it is quite uncomfortable. But again, it serves its purpose. Not great, but not the worst. The trigger is spongy, in a word. Like, it's not unusable. Like, I can get some decent semi-auto shots off with this thing, but it doesn't feel great. It's not snappy. And in a CQB setting, you do kind of want that, but the gunner standard doesn't provide that. So bear that in mind when you actually have it. Don't expect any wonders out of there. Also, the rate of fire is nothing to write home about either. Like, it's acceptable. It works. Like, but you're not going to be hitting anywhere close to like modified guns or really high performance things. Yeah, it's not great. It works, but don't rely on it. Then going down, you have the ambidextrous mag release here. No problems with that. Extremely simple mechanism. Glad it's ambidextrous. No problems whatsoever. Then you have the mags themselves. Now, I've not had any feeding problems with them whatsoever, but if ever you've owned an MP5 magazine, you'll know of my pain when I speak of the infinitely winding wheel. Like, you can feel like you're at 5 minutes at a time just winding this wheel, winding the wheel. So that'll start to hurt your hands eventually when you still do it, but it does function as a high cap magazine. I've had no problems with feeding. I do have problems with loading, however. The way you load it is there's a little trap door at the back of the mag here, but the trap door is seated inside the actual shell of the magazine itself. So when it gets to the near full point, like, you start actually catching BBs in the mechanism whilst you try to close the mag. So you have to chuck a few out, shake it about a bit, try to get no, a few more out, shake it about. Pain in the arse, basically. But they do work as mags, and once you get past that, then they are fine. They are acceptable. You can also buy a drum mag for this gun as well, which I've not had the pleasure of using, but if you really hate these, there is the option out there. Final points then. As mentioned at the top, you've got the bolt handle at the top, which is spring-loaded and you can lock it up. So technically, you could HK slap this thing. I really don't recommend you do that though. This feels extremely tinny and basic, and I think that'll snap off in no time at all if you tried doing that. But hey-ho. But when you pull it back and up, it does reveal the hop-up, which is on the right-hand side of the gun in here, and it's of a push lever sort of type. And it's a bit of a pain in the arse to adjust, to be honest, because the actual seating position you need it in, it's quite in the cylinder of the gun, so you're going to need a fingernail to get in there and adjust it. It's hard to make precise adjustments, and it might hurt your finger after a while. It stays in position though, and it functions well as a hop unit, so good on that part at least. So those are the actual features of the gun itself, but what about performance, reliability, that sort of thing? Well, whilst I do have qualms with the features of the gun, I have none whatsoever with the mechanical operation. I have had no problems with this when actually running it. It's not died on me, it's fed fine, it works fine, it's never jammed. So yeah, in terms of the part of where it counts, the gun does work quite well. The only thing that did break on me, as mentioned, was this rear sling point, but everything else on it was absolutely fine. It did what it set out to do, it works as an airsoft gun, and ultimately for the money it's asking, that's all you can really ask of it. So how does the gun perform in a chronograph and shooting test? Well, I'll say that there were some problems with the chrono test, especially when I got this new for the first time. The problem is that straight out of the box, this is shooting around about the 355 FPS mark, which is a bit of a pain, especially when you go to a site, because the vast majority of them will say if it is even 1 FPS over 350, they won't allow it on the field, which was not good for me. There are ways to get around this on the day when you have a brand new gun. What you can do is just load a mag in and just dump an entire mag's worth of ammo at the range. That'll actually wear the spring in, get the FPS down a little bit, and make sure that the hop unit is actually engaged. Then it'll give it a more accurate reading to what it's like during the game. But there is the risk that when you buy this and run it as standard, that depending on how like a site's chronographed, like they might have a plus minus percentage error. If it's not in your favour, you could potentially not be allowed on site with this gun, because it might just be 4 or 5 FPS over. After a couple of games, it did drop to about the 340, 345 mark, which is brilliant because it is on the high end, especially for a standard gun like this. That's a very good FPS reading, but the initial few games, I was always a bit concerned going up to the chronograph test because depending on what the site Chrono said, I might not be able to use it that day. So yeah, a little bit shaky on that front. Like, if you want to guarantee it, then just get the store you buy it from to actually put a smaller, lower FPS spring inside it. But yeah, it's good when you wear it in, because then it's on the high end, and it's consistently on the high end. But the fact it can tip over that FPS limit on some days, especially when it's brand new, is a bit concerning to me and makes it hard to recommend. But what about the shooting test? Well, the last time I was down at Project X, managed to get the shooting test done with the gun. I was firing from 30 metres away from a stable firing position using 0.25 gram BBs, and because the test was taken indoors, there was absolutely no crosswind to worry about for once. So, as can be seen from the test, it is not the most accurate gun in the world. Like, fair few of the shots did actually land on the target, but not where I wanted them to, and a fair few more missed entirely. Like, there's more indent marks in the tape than there was on the target itself. I don't have the faith in this gun to put it on semi and know that at 30 metres I'll get a one-shot, one-kill, like in an outdoor setting. Admittedly, that's not what it's for. It's more of a CQB platform kind of gun, but my point is here, don't expect to rely on the accuracy of this gun. The way you're going to get your targets down in game is by volume of fire, not accuracy of fire. So, where do you want to be on the airsoft field to get the most out of the Echo1 GAT? Well, considering its relatively lightweight, its exceptionally compact size, and not great accuracy, this should be quite obvious. You want to be right up in people's faces with this gun. The CQB arena, that's where this thrives in. Like, being able to pop around corners or doors. Having such a close gun to your front arm, it means you can just lean in and out of cover with no problems whatsoever. You can easily pop around corners and take shots where longer guns are going to struggle. Like, even another 3-4 inches on the end of this is going to be way less effective than a gun that is this small in terms of pieing the corner and getting around onto your targets. It does work in an outdoor setting as well. Like, admittedly, I had to put down more rounds downrange than I'd like to take the targets down in outdoors, but it does work for that as well. But what I'd say it's actually better as in that situation is as a backup weapon as opposed to a primary. If you're running a bolt-action sniper, for instance, having this on a secure sling, not one point, either the QD or both of them, because it will snap off otherwise. But if you have this on a sling and you're running it as a backup weapon, it can be very, very effective. It's a combination I use myself quite often, because most people, when they see a bolt-action sniper, think, I can get in his minimum engagement range, then he's going to be in trouble. Well, suddenly you pull out a full auto AEG, and they're rethinking their options. So it does really quite thrive in that as well. The one thing I will say with the Playstyles with this is don't buy the Echo1 GAT thinking it will be a great all-rounder. It isn't. Beyond 30 meters, other people are going to start outgunning you, either due to accuracy, most likely, or rate of fire. And it is the accuracy that lets it down the most with this one in that regard. Because I can't say with confidence I'll get that one shot, one kill at 30. You have to close the distance with this. If you're playing with a group of people, don't sit back and try to snipe people with this one. You're going to have to get aggressive, you're going to have to get brave, and you're going to have to go in their face. So get ready to charge in, because that's the only real way that the Echo1 GAT will work on its own. So ultimately then, would I recommend buying the Echo1 GAT? Now, that's a harder question than it initially sounds for me, because I can see plenty of reasons why someone would want this platform, but there's also quite a few reasons I could see that people wouldn't. So, as a CQB gun, yeah, the really compact nature, the small size of it, it's great for getting around corners and room clearing, but the trigger's a bit spongy and the full auto's not great, so it's not a perfect solution. As a sniper backup weapon, yeah, having a full auto AEG on hand is excellent to have, but you might find that a suppressed pistol or even a full auto gas blowback might be a bit more efficient at doing that job. As a starter package, yeah, you have everything in the box you need for this. The second high cap is especially appreciated, and more high-end guns don't come with batteries and definitely not chargers. Admittedly, the charger's not great to begin with, but you have the full package there. You could just get this and get into Airsoft. I could see in a year or two, however, that someone could outgrow this and expect something with a bit more high performance. But as a starting block, yeah, it could be quite good for that. So, when considering if you want the Echo1 GAT, I'd keep a couple of things in mind. First, definitely the first, try it before you buy it. Like, actually pick the thing up, shoulder it, hold it. Because the thing that will put most people off is how this thing feels, I think. If this does not feel right for you, then don't get it. End of story. Because you wouldn't want to live with it. And if it's uncomfortable for when you just pick it up and hold it for a minute or two, imagine what it's like after you're running around with a couple of hours for it in a game. Also, if you're an experienced player, question if there's a slot in your loadout that requires this sort of thing. Like, for me, the main reason I gravitated towards this is because I wanted a CQB gun because that was a big hole in my loadout, and even though, like, the standards version of this is okay, like, I'm actually intending on trying to upgrade this thing and get it to performance, because the frame's always going to stay the same, it's always going to be really small and compact, and the internals can always be improved. But if you're an experienced airsofter with quite a few guns in your loadout, question whether you need it. And finally, the point I make last with this one, don't get the version with the stock. Now, this surprised me when I came to that realisation, because the main reason I got the one with the stock is I wanted 1, 2, 3 points of contact, because I always find that really allows me to get the shots down range accurately. Like, even though there's no recoil on an airsoft gun, having that secure feeling of it really helps with this sort of thing. But when you get the stocked version, you can't use the sights. And if you can't use the sights, what's the point of having the secure position if you're not even guaranteed of where your shots are going? It's not even that accurate as standard to begin with anyway, so trying to chase the accuracy with this thing is a bit of a non-starter. What I'd actually recommend you do is, instead of like trying to find a solution to use a sight as standard, get a laser, fire from the hip. Because honestly, you're going to have much more of a fun time with this, and eliminating the stock means it'll even be better at the CQB environment of getting around and room clearing, like, which is a weird conclusion, because I've always wanted a stock on all the guns I have. Like, I've never seen the point of stockless ones, but now I kind of do. This has kind of taught me the reason why some guns are stockless, and it was a strange realisation for me to come to, but yeah, it's definitely one the Echo1 GAT taught me. So, summarise. Okay gun. Great price, try before you buy. So I hope you've enjoyed my video review of the Echo1 GAT. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask me, or perhaps you own one yourself and you want to leave your own feedback, well, put it in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And until next time then, this has been Dale of Lone Wombat Airsoft.